All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking into a UFO sighting that still has people talking.
Yeah.
It's the 1977 Flora, Mississippi incident.
Oh, interesting.
Look at this. Our source material is a wild mix. We've got first-hand accounts,
Okay.
news articles, a YouTube video,
Wow.
transcript, and even a global UFO sightings Wikipedia page.
So you've really gone deep on this one, huh?
Yeah, we really tried to do our homework here.
That's cool.
And we're not just going to rehash the story.
Right.
We're going to examine its credibility. What makes this case stand out,
Yeah, definitely.
from the tons of other UFO
Like
sightings.
amongst the sea of reports, right.
And does it connect to any broader UFO theories or patterns?
Absolutely, yeah. That's what's fascinating here. We're trying to figure out, what makes this case special.
Exactly. And the details of this case are pretty amazing.
Yeah.
We're talking multiple witnesses,
Hmm.
including law enforcement,
Oh.
theories about magnetic fields and UFOs, and even an encounter with the Men in Black.
Oh, wow. The Men in Black. Classic. Before we get into the Men in Black, though, I think it's important to sort of set the scene.
Okay.
Imagine Flora, Mississippi, a small town, fewer than 2,000 people.
Yeah.
You wouldn't exactly picture it as a UFO hotspot, right?
No, not really.
But that's what makes this story so interesting. It was 1977. An off-duty policeman and his friend were driving along Highway 22, just west of Flora.
Okay.
That's when things get a little strange. They saw these weird lights in the sky.
Okay, so not just your average flashing lights, I'm guessing.
No. They described these massive oval-shaped objects just hovering there.
Wow.
And get this, they said each one was as big as, quote, 3 Cadillacs.
Wait, 3 Cadillacs?
3 Cadillacs put together.
Huge. I can't even imagine. What else did they report?
They also mentioned seeing amber lights surrounding the base of these objects.
Uh-huh.
And what makes this case even more interesting, they weren't the only ones who saw these things.
Really? More witnesses?
Oh, yeah. A couple driving on the same highway, they also saw these 2 large oval objects just hovering above the ground.
Wow.
One of these objects just suddenly, zipped away at an incredible speed. The other appeared to land in a field nearby.
Okay.
But when the couple drove to the spot where they thought it landed, it was completely gone.
Okay, that's pretty creepy.
Yeah.
But, the fact that a police officer was involved
Right.
really adds something to this, don't you think? I mean, you'd think a police officer would be pretty, level-headed.
Yeah, I'm skeptical.
Well, you would think.
Right. But this officer was apparently so shaken up by what he saw that he stopped his car a mile and a half away from where the object seemed to land.
Oh.
He even called for backup. And, get this, around 20 other law enforcement officers ended up at the scene.
20 officers.
Yeah.
That's a lot of official attention for a light in the sky.
It makes you wonder what they saw to get that kind of response,
Yeah, for sure. And, this case actually caught the eye of someone pretty big in the UFO world.
Yeah.
Dr. J. Allen Hynek.
Ah, yes. Dr. Hynek.
He was, a super famous astronomer and UFO researcher.
The OG ufologist.
Yeah. And he even authored Project Blue Book,
Right.
a
Yeah.
major Air Force investigation into UFOs. And he was so intrigued by the Flora incident
Oh, wow.
that he contacted the sheriff's office to learn more about it.
Really? So he took this case seriously, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. That's really significant. There must have been something really unique about this sighting.
Well, yeah. And what's really interesting is that Dr. Hynek had this theory about why UFOs might be drawn to certain places.
Okay, I'm listening.
He believed they might be guided by magnetic lines on Earth, similar to how, radio waves travel.
Ah, interesting.
He thought these magnetic lines could be acting as a pathway for UFOs. And this wasn't just like some random speculation.
Right.
It was a theory based on years of research.
So you're saying there could be, UFO hotspots because of these magnetic fields?
Yeah, it makes you wonder, right?
That's a really fascinating theory. Unfortunately, though, getting more information from those involved was tricky. The deputy who initially saw the UFOs, he became really reluctant to talk about the incident afterwards.
Oh, really? What do you think that is?
Well, it's tough to say. It could be fear of ridicule,
Yeah.
maybe even pressure from somewhere to keep quiet.
Right, keep it under wraps.
Yeah, it definitely adds to the mystery,
It really does. And the Flora incident wasn't the only strange thing happening in Mississippi around that time.
Oh, right. What else happened?
Remember the Pascagoula abduction?
Of course. 1973,
Yeah.
2 shipyard workers claiming to be abducted by aliens.
While fishing on the Pascagoula River.
Exactly. It was a huge deal. Even the sheriff was convinced that something really bizarre had happened.
Yeah, it seems like Mississippi has its fair share of unexplained encounters. But what I find really interesting is how the Flora incident, with all its unique details, actually ties into some common themes
Okay.
we see in other UFO stories. What really stood out to you about those connections?
I think one of the most striking connections is the proximity to water.
Okay.
Both Mississippi and Louisiana are, right on the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
And we've heard a lot about like a possible connection between bodies of water and UFO activity.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a recurring pattern in many UFO sightings.
Definitely, yeah.
Why that might be, though, still a mystery.
Absolutely. And then there's, of course, that whole man in black encounter, the off-duty policeman who first saw the UFOs.
Right.
He was later visited by this strange man dressed all in black.
Classic. Have you ever heard about the men in black before?
Oh, yeah.
They've been a part of UFO folklore forever, often described as like showing up after UFO sightings to intimidate witnesses,
Right.
maybe to gather information. It's all very hush-hush mysterious.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of them, but it always seemed like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
So what happened with this policeman and this man in black?
Well, according to the story, this man in black met the policeman at a local diner.
Okay.
And get this, he recounted the events of the sighting in perfect detail, like he'd been there himself.
That's chilling. Adds a whole other level to this Flora case.
Right?
Do you think there could be something to these men in black stories, or is it just, folklore?
That's the question, isn't it? It's been puzzling researchers for decades. It's hard to say for sure. There are all sorts of theories, but very little concrete evidence. Definitely adds to the mystique, though, right?
It really does.
Yeah.
And what's also interesting is that even today, locals in Flora still talk about seeing UFOs.
No way, really? So it's like a local legend,
Yeah.
a town secret.
Yeah, it's been passed down over the years. What do you make of that?
Well, it's definitely intriguing. It suggests that the 1977 incident might not have been a one-off. Perhaps there's something about this area that makes it a focal point for these unexplained phenomena.
Right.
Maybe it's those magnetic fields,
Yeah.
or the proximity to water,
Right.
or something else we haven't even thought of.
Right. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the specifics of the Flora incident, some of the theories surrounding it. For those listening, what are some of the key takeaways from this case?
Well, the Flora incident offers this fascinating glimpse into the world of UFOs, right?
Yeah.
And it's complex, it's baffling. We have multiple witnesses, including a law enforcement officer who reported seeing the same extraordinary event.
Yeah.
We have Dr. Hynek's theory about magnetic fields possibly playing a role. And of course, we have the enduring mystery of the men in black. But perhaps the most important takeaway is that this incident is a reminder that there's still so much we don't know about the universe and the possibilities out there.
Absolutely. It's a reminder to, keep an open mind, question what we think we know.
Exactly. That's what makes exploring these topics so captivating. Challenges us to think beyond the ordinary.
Well said. We'll be right back to dive even deeper into the Flora UFO incident, so stay tuned. Welcome back. We're continuing our deep dive into the Flora UFO incident. And, something that really stuck with me is the sheer size of these objects.
Right.
Remember, the witnesses said each one was the size of 3 Cadillacs. I mean, that's just massive.
It is pretty mind-boggling, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard to even picture something that big just floating in the sky.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about the technology involved. I mean, think about it. Our most advanced aircraft today, they're loud, they leave trails, and they can't just disappear instantly like that.
That's a good point. It's like we're not even playing the same game, technologically speaking.
Right. It's like comparing a horse and buggy to a spaceship. If those accounts are accurate, we're talking about a whole different level of technology.
Totally. Okay, so we talked about those magnetic fields and how they might be connected to UFO activity. Are there any other theories out there that try to explain why UFOs seem to cluster in certain areas?
Well, there are a few other ideas researchers have explored. One thought is that they might be drawn to areas with a lot of natural resources.
Interesting.
Maybe they're harvesting energy from those resources or using them in a way we don't even understand yet.
Like how we might be interested in areas with oil or valuable minerals.
Exactly. Sort of like they're looking for the best place to fuel up, so to speak.
I like that. What other theories are there?
Well, another theory connects UFO activity to geological activity. The idea is that they might be attracted to places with a lot of, well, geological stuff going on, like fault lines or areas with earthquakes and volcanoes.
So maybe it's not the water itself, but what's happening under the surface that they're interested in.
Right. And some researchers have even gone as far as to say that these geologically active areas could be, get this, portals or gateways for interdimensional travel.
Okay, now we're talking. Interdimensional travel. That's getting into some serious sci-fi territory, but it's fun to think about.
Oh, definitely. I think these theories, even if we don't know for sure if they're true or not, they show how much these UFO sightings have captured our imaginations. They really push us to think outside the box, scientifically speaking.
For sure. Okay, let's talk a bit more about those Men in Black encounters. I mean, they're such a classic part of UFO lore, but what do we actually know about them? Is there any real evidence to support their existence beyond those anecdotal stories?
That's the tough part. Solid evidence about the Men in Black is pretty hard to come by. Most of what we know comes from those stories told by witnesses, like the one from the Flora incident.
Right.
And there are some common threads in those stories. They often describe these guys in black suits, pale skin, and this kind of unsettling vibe. And they always seem to pop up unexpectedly, asking very specific questions about UFO sightings.
Yeah, it's almost like something out of a spy movie. Like they know way more about the witnesses and the sightings than they should.
Exactly. Now, there are some people who try to explain these encounters away as hoaxes, or just cases of mistaken identity.
Makes sense.
Some skeptics think witnesses might be misinterpreting things, seeing regular people in dark clothes and thinking they're these mysterious agents. Others suggest it could be psychological, like sleep paralysis or hallucinations.
That's definitely possible. But I have to say, some of those accounts are so detailed, so specific, it makes you wonder.
It really does. And the fact that these Men in Black stories have been around for decades all over the world, it adds to the intrigue, right? Maybe there's something real behind those stories after all.
Okay, so let's say, just for fun, that the Men in Black are real. What do you think their purpose might be?
Oh man, that's the big question. Lots of theories out there. Some folks think they're government agents trying to cover up evidence of UFOs and extraterrestrials. Others believe they're part of some super secret organization that's monitoring, maybe even controlling, how we humans interact with alien beings.
And then there's the idea that they could be extraterrestrials themselves, in disguise, trying to blend in and observe us.
Right. Each theory has its pros and cons. Without more concrete evidence, it's really hard to say for sure.
It's a real mystery. But let's get back to the deputy from the Flora incident. You mentioned how he was pretty open about what he saw at first, but then clammed up.
Yeah, and that change of heart isn't unusual in UFO cases. A lot of witnesses report feeling pressure or even threats to keep quiet about their experiences. Sometimes it seems to be coming from authorities, sometimes from friends and family, and sometimes it's not clear where it's coming from.
Almost like there's this unspoken rule that you don't talk about UFOs.
Right.
It's got to be tough for people who've had these incredible experiences and want to share them.
Definitely creates a barrier to having an open discussion about UFOs. When people are afraid to come forward or their stories are dismissed, it makes it really hard to get to the bottom of things.
It's a tough situation. We need more people to talk about their experiences so we can learn. But that fear of being judged holds a lot of people back.
I agree. And I think it's important to remember that everyone who reports a UFO sighting deserves to be treated with respect, even if their story sounds strange or unbelievable. Dismissing those experiences without really considering them only makes things worse and discourages others from coming forward.
Well said. I think the Flora incident, with all its twists and turns, really shows how complex and fascinating the whole UFO phenomenon is.
Totally.
We've got multiple witnesses, connections to broader UFO patterns, and those hints of secrecy and maybe even a cover-up. It's a really compelling case.
It really is. And it reminds us that we need to approach these cases with an open mind, a real desire to find the truth, but also with a critical eye. We need to be thoughtful in how we analyze the information.
Absolutely. We'll be back after a short break to wrap up our deep dive and explore some final thoughts on this captivating case. We're back, and as we wrap up our Flora deep dive, I was thinking about the timing of this whole thing. The 1970s seemed to be like a peak for UFO sightings, didn't it?
It was a pretty wild time for UFOs, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The Flora incident, it was just one part of this much bigger global thing happening.
Right, like that Pascagoula abduction we were talking about.
Exactly, and the Travis Walton disappearance.
The Phoenix Lights. It seemed like every other week there was some major UFO event happening in the U.S.
Oh, and it wasn't just the U.S. either. You had the Tehran UFO incident over in Iran, the Kaikoura lights in New Zealand.
Oh, yeah, and the Rendlesham Forest incident in the U.K.
Yeah.
What was going on? It was like the whole world was suddenly obsessed with UFOs.
It really was. And these weren't just single people reporting something they saw either.
Yeah.
You had multiple witnesses, radar confirmations, even military pilots reporting seeing these unexplained objects. It was huge. UFOs were suddenly front-page news.
So what do you think was so special about the 1970s? Was it just a random blip, or was something else going on that we don't know about?
I wish I had a clear answer for you. Some people think it was a time of increased extraterrestrial activity for some reason. Others think it was more about us, like maybe our awareness and interest in UFOs was just growing. But whatever the reason, the sheer number of sightings in the 1970s forced people to start taking the whole UFO thing more seriously.
It's true. So many reports, and from credible sources, too.
Yeah.
It was tough to write it all off as, hoaxes or people just seeing things.
Yeah, up to that point, a lot of scientists and government folks just dismissed UFO sightings as nothing. Hoaxes, misidentifications, overactive imaginations.
Right.
But the 1970s kind of blew that out of the water. There were just too many sightings, and they were often very consistent with each other. You couldn't ignore it anymore.
Yeah, like the evidence finally reached a point where people had to admit that there might be something more to this.
Exactly. And that shift in thinking led to more investigations, more serious research, more open discussions about what might be going on. It was a real turning point.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Flora incident, what are the key takeaways you hope listeners will remember about this case and the whole UFO phenomenon?
Well, I think Flora is a great example of how complex and how intriguing this whole UFO thing is. There's still so much we just don't understand about the universe and what might be out there.
Totally.
It reminds us to be careful about how we look at witness testimony, to consider different perspectives, and to keep our minds open to different explanations.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Like so many other UFO sightings, Flora leaves us with more questions than answers.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of what makes this whole topic so fascinating.
It's a journey of discovery, right?
Exactly. And who knows what we might find as we keep searching.
The universe is full of wonder, and there's always more to learn. Keep looking up, keep those questions coming, and never stop exploring. You never know what you might find.
Well said. And that's a wrap on this deep dive into the Flora UFO incident. Until next time, keep exploring the unknown.